Hello, I'm Larry Johnson, speaking to you from the sonar21.com channel. Uh, I want to call to your attention some recent statements by Sergei Lavrov, who is the foreign minister of Russia, and the deputy foreign minister, Sergei Rybakov. That's Ryabkov. Both men are serious professional diplomats. I've had the privilege of meeting Mr. Rybakov, and I can tell you that in person, he is a quiet professional. He is quite underspoken. He is not given to bombast, certainly not given to idle threats. If you're meeting just for pleasantries, he's very pleasant to talk to. So I was floored when I heard him say the following today, commenting on the Biden administration's decision to allow Ukrainian strikes into Russia using American arms. He said that the Biden administration's move may have fatal consequences. He went on to say that for unknown reasons, the Biden administration underestimates the seriousness of the rebuff they may receive. And he went on to comment, he was concerned about Ukrainian attempts to strike Russia's strategic radar system. These are the early warning systems that Russia relies on to notify it that a potential nuclear attack from the United States or Europe is underway. This comment by Deputy Foreign Minister Rybakov needs to be heard loud and clear in the halls of Washington. But it's not just Mr. Rybakov saying this. It's Sergei Lavrov, the dean of foreign ministers really in the world. He's probably the most respected foreign minister there is out there. He is the consummate professional. And again, he reiterated the very same warnings that his deputy foreign minister, Mr. Rybakov, issued. The way Russia is looking at this is when the United States, if it does decide to deploy an F-16 to Ukraine, Russia has to assume, as the United States would assume, if Russia did the same thing and deploying a combat aircraft capable of carrying a nuclear weapon, if they deployed that to Cuba, the United States would take notice and would have to assume the worst, assume that, in fact, Russia would be preparing to strike us, and we would take appropriate measures, first warning the Russians, and then if they didn't heed our warnings, striking back. Well, guess what? The Russians inhabit that same kind of world. They're looking not only at the United States, actively now encouraging and supporting Ukraine use of ATACMS, Storm Shadow, and possibly German Taurus missiles that can fly up to 300 miles inside Russia. And the Russians have to be concerned and are expressing the concern that they can't be confident that the United States is not deploying a nuclear-tipped warhead. This has become an especially acute concern on the part of Russia in light of last week's drone attacks on these strategic radars that are used to detect inbound intercontinental ballistic missiles. There is no justification for attacking those radars. They do nothing to advance Ukraine's cause in fighting the land war against Russia in Ukraine. The only possible reason for launching that kind of attack is to take out Russia's early warning system. Accordingly, this has caused a dramatic shift in Russia's rhetoric on this issue. And they are warning that they will not hesitate to retaliate and to take preemptive, proactive measures. These folks are not playing. They are dead serious. And by virtue of being dead serious, they're trying to put the United States on notice. The problem is, many in the United States positions of decision-making within both the Biden White House, State Department, and apparently CIA are dismissing these as idle threats. From what I have observed, as I've monitored Russian military action since the start of the special military operation, Russia doesn't make idle threats. Russia is very upfront about stating its objectives, what it intends to do, what it views as a red line, as something that must not be crossed. The West is making the mistake of assuming that past Russian patience in not retaliating, for example, with drone strikes that hit the Kremlin, that this is a sign of Russian weakness or Russian fear. It is no such thing. It is a sign of Russian patience. But we in the West are mistaking Russian patience for Russian stupidity. And that is the fatal error that I think Sergei Rybakov had in mind when he issued this warning the other day. I think it is incumbent upon every American to contact their member of Congress, their senator, and tell them, we don't want to go to war with Russia. We don't want to risk a nuclear war with Russia. We need to sit down and talk to the Russians. Even during the height of the Cuban Missile Crisis, which was one of the last times that we came so close to entering into a nuclear war with Russia. It was then the Soviet Union. Even during that crisis, Robert F. Kennedy, the brother of the president, John F. Kennedy, was talking to the Russians directly. They were communicating. It turned out back in that crisis, there was a lot of misinformation and misunderstanding on both sides. Even the president, John F. Kennedy, did not realize prior to this event that the United States had deployed nuclear-capable missiles in Turkey that could reach Russia, which was why Russia, in turn, was giving us a taste of our own medicine. And boy, when we got a taste of them putting missiles into Cuba, we didn't like it one bit. And then we got angry without realizing that we had actually provoked this response by Russia or the then Soviet Union. That crisis ended peacefully because cooler heads prevailed. I am very, very concerned that we do not have cooler heads right now in Washington, either on the Democrat side and in the person of the feeble, demented Joe Biden, or his equally feckless, inept Secretary of State Antony Blinken, or the incompetent Jake Sullivan. None of these people understand the kind of nuclear fire that they are playing with and putting the citizens of the United States at risk. Likewise, on the Republican side, there are very, very few voices. I think only J.D. Vance and Rand Paul on the Senate side are the only ones trying to talk reason and common sense and encourage the opening of talks and negotiations to ease tensions. Instead, the Biden administration is pouring fuel on a fire, and this is not a conventional fire. This is a fire with nuclear consequences. I wish I had a cheerier message for you today, but I cannot help but underscore the urgency of paying attention to what senior Russian officials are now saying. They're not kidding. They're not trying to blow smoke up your ass. They're not bloviating and making idle threats. They mean what they say. And I think we need to pay attention. Thank you for listening.